I found this picture when I was reading a story about Boris Yeltsin. This goes back, it's 1989, and Boris Yeltsin is an up-and-coming member of the Politburo in the old Soviet Union. Not Russia, the old Soviet Union, the USSR. And Yeltsin had gone to the US because at that time the Soviets and the Americans were doing a joint space mission. So Yeltsin had gone to Houston to inspect it. Now, they said all the Soviets had heard stories about the American supermarkets. Remember, this is at a time where the Soviet mindset was that Russia could produce more for the average person, and the average person would be better off. And what did Khrushchev say? We will outproduce you because we have giant economies of scale and we have central planning. We have the great planners that plan everything. Don't leave it to the market. The market will get it all wrong. We have these intelligent central planners that know best, right? And that was what they thought. And if you hadn't experienced anything, the idea of that you have this central planning with all these sort of best and brightest people making the decisions for everyone else, and they're done in giant economies of scale, this will work. And that was the contest between basically the communist idea and the free market idea. Was, well, no, you leave things to the free market. You have the combined wisdom of millions of people making these small individual decisions are what work best, and you give people the freedom to make those decisions. So that was the real ideological fight, remember, when I was at school. So Yeltsin had actually gone there, and he always thought that Soviet was so much better at producing things. On his last day, this is a true story, he was going back to his hotel to fly the next day, and he said on the way back in the car from where it was, he said, "I want to drink vodka." You can imagine. So his entourage stopped at random at a supermarket that was called Randall's supermarket, just so they knew. So when Yeltsin walked in that supermarket, he picked it completely at random, and he knew it couldn't be a setup, because that's what the Russians used to do to the Americans when they would come up here. They'd set up a false village and show, look how wonderful things are, and it was all false, it was all a facade, and they assumed the Americans did the same thing. So that was how they explained away the American supermarket. So Yeltsin's gone to this American supermarket, and he's walked around it, and he's seen all the food, and they write about it in his diary, and his entourage write about it in their diaries. They said this, and their eyes open wide, and they can't believe there's refrigerators of food, and they go to the bread section, and there's all these different breads, and they're freshly baked, and there's smell, and it's beautiful, and anyone can walk up, and there's no queues of people go up. And they said, like when we're in Russia, you had to line up in a queue for hours to get a loaf of soggy bread, and you had no choice. And they said it blew Yeltsin's mind, and you can see him in the picture there with his hands wide open, looking in astonishment at this food, at all the array of food that the average citizen had, and the quality and the variety. And he said he writes and he said that was his ideological conversion. And they said on the flight back home to Russia, they said he sat with his head in his hands, and he said, what have we done to the Russian people? Because he knew that with the agriculture and the soils and the climate that the Soviet Union had, that they should be able to produce at least equal to the food that America could do. But he could see that what the average person in America was able to obtain was so much better than even those in the Politburo could get. And that was Yeltsin's ideological conversion. Now, why that was important, because it was a few years later, remember where there was the Russian Revolution, and the old Soviet generals tried to have a counter-revolution. And it was Yeltsin that went and stood up on the tanks outside the parliament and basically killed off the counter-revolution. It was Yeltsin's bravery of doing that. Without that one moment, stopping in that supermarket at random, Yeltsin would have never had that ideological conversion, and he may never have stopped those Russian generals from that counter-revolution. And that could have turned world history on its head. The Cold War could still be in existence today if that happened. So that's why that one photograph is such an important moment in history, when Yeltsin is basically seeing someone that had been brought up with the total communists and left-wing and central planning ideology has disabused of those views in one split second. And that's why I've got that picture proudly hanging above here in my office.